I'm half Swiss. Like,
Oh, I didn't know that about you.
yeah, so half Swiss, half Portuguese, born in born in Australia, hence the kangaroo. Hey, 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 everybody. We are live and we are talking about gurus today. Who we got on? The amazing Adriana Taker. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Beatrice. Always fun to chat with you. Always.
Oh my God, people, we have this amazing it's almost coincidental, but like, we there was some planning. Podcast episode of the art of branding dropping this Thursday, which is going to follow on from this episode. There's going to be so many gold nuggets, like just all those 30 minutes, all the gold nuggets.
Ah,
Just waiting for perhaps a few more people to jump on.
mm.
Hello, with a LinkedIn user. For some reason, Restream is just showing it as a LinkedIn user. Hello. Can you see who it is on your side, Adriana?
No, it's LinkedIn user, no profile picture, nothing.
Sad. Hello, LinkedIn user. Thank you for joining us. Anyhow, now we are on here today about one key topic, the big topic, LinkedIn gurus. Hey, Dr. Frank. Hey, Giada. Thank you so much for joining us. So, we see LinkedIn gurus. Like, there are so many everywhere, and just the content's everywhere. Like, you're sick of it, I'm sick of it. But for some reason, they seem to be working. I know you've got an opinion on this, so tell me.
I do. I know that clickbait and sensationalism are always going to work, because they pull at our heartstrings, and more importantly, they pull at our dopamine centers in the brain. So we want that. We want that quick fix. We want to make $10,000 by working 10 minutes a day. We want it all, even though rationally and deep down we know that it's not going to work. So still we're tempted to try just another hack, a tiny little one, maybe a hook, maybe something, something to spice things up and make it easier for us. And it's funny that I've actually created a community around my own brand that's filled with people who have tried the guru hacks and have tried the quick and fast and get rich quick schemes, and they are pretty much tired of it, and now they're looking for the real stuff, the foundational stuff. So, yeah, my strong opinion about LinkedIn gurus is that they pretty much work like a pyramid scheme. You try them once, you never go back to it, and the only people getting rich is, well, the gurus themselves.
Exactly. And even then, I debate that if they're actually getting rich. They might have a ton of followers, and that's something that, like, I've spoken to a lot of people about, is they may have a ton of followers, but whether they're actually making the revenue that's comparable to, say, for example, my business consultant, or someone else that's working a different kind of business. Like, the guru's content, right? It's like specifically targeted, and like, I'm sure you have a lot of thoughts on this, and it's very structured and targeted to newbies,
Oh, yeah,
right?
absolutely. Because the seasoned expert doesn't really fall for this. And it's either targeted for newbies or for non marketers. But the issue with non marketers is that they've tried a ton of stuff before. So they wised up as well. They don't need to be marketers to smell the pyramid scheme a mile away. So, yeah. And speaking of what you just said, whether they make or not enough revenue, I think it depends, as always, because if you look at a consulting business, you typically find that, yeah, they make more money than Gooroo. Your average consulting business will make more money than your average self-proclaimed guru at the very least. But right there at the top, the top gurus, they make a shit ton of money, and they make it for real because they have very little overhead and very few people to pay there. So it's if you pass a certain threshold, it's much easier and much more profitable to be to be a guru if you have the stomach for it.
So what we're saying is, there's an option. Here's another job. Like, okay, go and be a guru. No judgment, no judgment. And I'm just gonna say hi to a few new LinkedIn friends that have joined us since. Hey Sue, we've got Rachel. Hey Rachel.
Hey Rachel. Hey
And
Terry.
Carrie. Hey. Yeah. All right. There is one thing that we were talking about earlier. We teased it in our preview video just to shake things up because, regular LinkedIn live promos of just text is like, it's so 2023. What we were talking about was the two very big opinions. One, which is go out, go find out what your audience thinks. Are they going to like your idea? Go do that research, go poll them. And the other main thought is that your audience doesn't know what they want. Same thing as, say, for example, the first car out there. People didn't know that they could, they wanted a car. People didn't know that they wanted 1,000 songs in their pockets or, some variation of like songs, but it came out and they were successful. So I know you have a very strong opinion on this. Tell me.
So first off, I don't know if the Henry Ford quote, if I had asked my customers what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse, is accurate. I think it's attributed to him, but we have no records of him actually saying that. And what's more interesting is that Henry Ford did not invent the car. He invented an assembly line for Ford Model T. So it's a bit, I don't know, taken out of context, if you will. As for the iPod, Steve Jobs is famous for doing very in-depth audience research, and whether or not the audience knows what they want um, is not actually the question. I think the question is, do you know how to get that information from them? Because indeed, people may say that they want faster horses. They can't think of a car. That's your job as an innovator in the car industry. But but if you know that they want faster horses, you can think of something else that could do the same job. Maybe it's a flying horse. Maybe it's a car. Maybe it's an UFO. I don't know. The opportunities are endless, right? So. Yes, I'm on the side that says customer research is important, customer research is valuable, but it's only as valuable as um, as the way you conduct it, as the insights you can derive from it. Because I've seen people get lost in customer research. They ask so many questions. They ask the wrong questions, and at the end of the day, they have a bunch of answers. They don't know what to do with them. They don't know how to use them. So customer, much like anything else in marketing, it's only as good as you make it. Because we're talking about LinkedIn today. Remember when those gurus used to say that all you have to do is show up for 50 days in a row or something like that and you'll be a minor LinkedIn celebrity? Well, of course, but if you show up for 50 days in a row with crap content, you're not going to be a LinkedIn celebrity. So it's not just about showing up and doing something, it's also about the way you do it.
Exactly. It's that, and also putting in, that level of creativity, or that, like, the way that I see it is like squinting at the problem, right? Like you're looking at the edges of it, right? Like, okay, how can we look at this from a different perspective? And it's also why you see a lot in my content, like those pop culture references and nostalgic references to make things a relatable, a having a different approach to every other person. Like, everyone that's saying the exact same message, go do X, Y, Z, 1, 2, 3,
Yep.
right?
Yeah, and then they
That's
tell you this is how you stand out. Well, if you can't stand out doing what everyone does, it's I don't know. I think it's common sense to realize that. But if you say this
exactly.
out loud, if you publish it on LinkedIn, people are going to tell you that, hey, this is a hot take. No, it's not. It's common sense. Really, it's common sense. If everyone's dressed the same, no one stands out.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think we've got a question coming in here from Jeremy Miller on customer research. So
Mm.
let's see if we can. Oh,
How do
it'll
you
lower.
ask?
There we
Ah.
go.
How do you
How do
ask?
you
Well,
ask?
can I take the first stab at it, Beatrice?
Go for
And
it.
then you can tell Jeremy how you ask. So of course it depends on what you're researching. If you're trying to innovate, to actually innovate, not just create another template on something, you're of course going to ask people what they struggle with the most, and then you're going to find out what's the best tool to do a certain job. Because if you zoom out, you're going to see that the jobs people want to accomplish haven't changed that much over the centuries. People want love, wealth, a social life, and I don't know, a good shelter from the rain. So the way you can improve. Hang on, I'm rambling. So it's up to you to decide which aspect of their lives you can improve and how you can do that. A good example here are alarm clocks. People still buy old school alarm clocks, even though we all have an alarm clock on our phone. The reason they do that is that you can't snooze the damn thing. And if you want to wake up early, you're going to use an old school alarm clock because it won't shut up until you get up and kill it. You can snooze your phone for 10 times in a row and catch some more Z's. Now, to answer your question specifically, it also depends on which phase of product creation you are. For instance, you can ask people what format they would like you to deliver a certain product in. I did this when I launched my audience accelerator course. I um, i asked people if they were interested in the topic first and foremost, because is there a need, is there a job to be done there? People said yes. Then I vetted it as a workshop, as a live workshop. People loved it. I got great feedback, but they also told me it was a lot of information, which told me that it's a better fit for a self paced course. So, at every stage of building a product, I ask my customers questions. I ask my audience what they felt about it. Did they like the format? Did they enjoy the, I don't know, the workshop, the additional materials, and so on? To me, this is the most valuable form of customer research, that the one that you conduct as you build your product, not after you build your product. Build it side by side with your audience. You'll see that pretty much anything you want to build, say for a couple of physical products, you can build them along with your audience. I'm going to shut up now and let Beatrice give her answer as well, because I've been rambling.
Well, I completely agree with the end of, like, what you were saying there of having, okay, building alongside with your customers, like having those people in there, trialing with them. That most of the well-known products that we know now, they've gone through countless iterations behind the scenes, and now we look at them, oh, they're so perfect. Like, but the thing is that all these little iterations, all these comments, all these thoughts have been put together and gone through, like, little changes, little changes, little changes. And that's the same thing, like, when I'm working with people about their brand. It's not like one big change. I never recommend, hey, go in, like, let's plan out for 6 months and then launch it. The same thing is like my approach with the brand. We take little changes, little changes, little changes. Next thing you know, somebody looks at your brand 6 months later. they've also made that mental transition to what to expect rather than having that almost jarring feeling,
Yep.
right?
New branding
And
for this.
this is a good balance, right? Between these two different, like, you've got the content, you've got the future proofing, you've got like, okay, how do you approach from the brand side? And to further go into that is, hey, ask those questions, but take a step back and squint. Like, don't just immediately go with the first thought that comes to mind, right? Because usually the first thought or the second thought or the third thought, they're like almost the most common ones, right? Like, you want to get away from what everybody else in the industry is doing because it's already been done, right? So taking a step back, looking at actually behind the scenes, what I'm doing is I'm looking at a bunch of different newsletters, Adriana's one included, and it's just reading them, right? But as you're reading them, you're taking in different perspectives. You're stepping back from your uh, mindset. Like, the same idea is why, like, people say, "Oh, go out for a walk," right?
Mm-hmm.
It gives you that like step away from being in it too much.
Yeah.
There's this saying where you can't, and you're gonna love this one, Adriana. You can't read what's on the outside, the wine label, from the inside of the wine bottle. You
Mm.
have to be like outside. You have to be able to communicate, right? Like, with the person who's on the outside, they need to know, okay, what they're reading. They need to be able to understand it, for one, and then have that communication. Same as on the outside, right? They're not going to know what that wine tastes like, but the one on the inside.
Yep. Excellent point, and I love that saying. I had almost forgotten it. It's a much better saying than "you can't see the forest for the trees," because it has wine in it.
I mean, wine, obviously.
And also, Jeremy, I just saw that you were actually asking about language. They don't have the language because you're talking about futuristic stuff. I think a good example here is email because people never thought that they could communicate via via the internet and have their letters delivered within seconds instead of days or weeks. But I think the best approach is what Beatrice just talked about, going gradually. You also mentioned co-design sessions. You're not going to be able to break something completely innovative into a market unless you take baby steps. If we recall the first cars, we first had the carriage, then we had the car, and the first cars were really really slow. And the same goes for email. They could have called it anything else, but they chose email to build some rapport with their audience, to tell them, hey, it's just like regular mail, just has E in front of it, and it's via the internet. And as you said, Jeremy, co-design sessions, yes, they are extraordinarily valuable for actual innovation, for futuristic stuff.
Yes.
We
And
have another question.
we have
Oh,
another question here. I will actually leave that to you to have a tackle at first. How do you get them to answer the questions? Because this is the bit I struggle with. Even if I have answered the problem that they are telling me that they are struggling with.
well, first off, you go to the channel that they're most likely to respond. If it's on social media, most platforms have the option to create a poll. If it's email subscribers, you can add a poll in your newsletter. Uh, if none of these things are working and you're not gathering enough data, try going for in depth interviews where you schedule a quick call with your audience, say 30 minutes, but you also give them something in exchange. You say, hey, we're going to have a 30-minute call. You can pick my brain for 15 minutes. It's completely free. I'll answer anything you want me to. But for the other 15 minutes, you're going to answer my questions because I need to do some market research. This is the approach that I found is best for when you want in-depth data and especially qualitative data, not quantitative. You want to understand customer language. You want to see exactly what they struggle with, and you cannot gather that data in a poll. You need to hear them speak. for that.
Exactly. There's so much having that balance there, right? Like it's always got to be not just taking, right? It's like, hey, what can I give? And then, to be able to um, draw people in. And so, speaking of drawing people in, I know we're speaking a lot about content before this and hook lines. Adriana, I'm sure you remember, what was this, like about 6 months ago, maybe a year ago, where like there were just all of these hook lines. Buy our pack of hook lines. Have you ever bought any? Like what?
No,
I know this answer, but like I wanted to see your reaction, like flip a table, just like, are you kidding me?
no, but I saw some of them. Someone sent it to me and asked for my opinion, and I was very, very blunt, and I told him, "Do not sell this shit." I mean, um, because as I read through that PDF, I realized that I knew about 47 of the 50 hooks. And if I already knew them, a lot of people already knew them, especially the LinkedIn power users who spend a lot of time in there, you know? So they are completely useless. Once they end up in a collection of hooks, you can bet that they're useless because by definition a hook is meant to stop the scroll, to grab attention, to get people to stop and read. But if it's the same hook they've seen 50 times already today, it's not stopping the scroll. It's it it just immerses people further into their doom scrolling. And I think these days the easiest way to stand out on LinkedIn and on any other social media platform is to not use a hook. At least not a traditional hook, not a traditional format, just do something different. For instance, when Beatrice had the idea, hey, let's do a promo clip for our event, I was, yeah, let's do it. No one does this. It's just a post, you know? And this is why it's valuable because you have to zig when others zag. But on the other hand, you have to know when it's time to fall in line and do what everyone else does because you can't just zag when everyone else zigs, you know? It's a very, very delicate balance that's very hard to teach, in fact.
That I can get on board with. I've got a lot of people that they see, okay, the baseball bat, they see the kangaroo, they see the shades, and they're like, oh, I don't want to be like badass and do like, you don't have to. You don't have to be extreme, but you do have to be different, and you do have to lean into one thing, like whatever that one thing, whatever you stand by, you pick your stance and you stick by it every single place. And we were talking about this, like, how do we make sure that, like, regardless of where we are, that we're seen in the exact same way. And it's by having that same kind of message, same kind of voice, right? Same kind of, like, the visuals are the last thing, but they still are part of it. They're still part of it. Like, when somebody is like, hey, my rebrand, like, was this just a visual rebrand, or was this like a rebrand where you've actually like, you're like, yes, I've experienced this.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah. Did you just change the logo and called it a rebrand? Yeah.
Or the colors.
Oh, yeah. Even worse? Yes, the
Even
tiniest
worse.
possible. Yeah. So I want to sum this up by encouraging you to write like a human, speak like a human in social media. Do not use AI to generate hooks unless you're already a very skilled marketer and you can separate the wheat from the chaff. But then I want to ask Beatrice because she's the best person I know to ask this question to. How do you stand up using? How do you stand out using branding? Because I know the first time I saw you in my feed, there was a kangaroo, there was a bat, and I was like, hey, hold on, the hell is this? What just happened on LinkedIn, you know? And so yeah, you stopped my scroll and you kept doing that even after we connected. And please tell us, how do we use branding to stand out on a platform that's getting more and more crowded by the minute?
So there are many ways, and what I mentioned before is really the biggest thing. It is choosing one thing, and I think that's the biggest one that I see a lot of people fall on, and it's that consistency element, right? Of whatever place, be it within their team. So, if you have a business, you got a team of like 50, you got a team of 100, making sure that it's like fully implemented and people are aware. It's not just like, oh, I've gone through this like strategy effort and we've just put it into a drawer, or like that the heads know about it. That's it. Like it needs to be in the training. It needs to be in the operations. Like how do we approach customers? Like how about for the sales? How does that sales conversation go? How can we integrate that? How can we integrate the voice, right? So from the team side, from the socials, right? Making sure that each channel is the same perception. If you're going to go into one channel, say for example Instagram or TikTok, and like start writing like humorous like kickback lines, do that everywhere. Don't just have that in one place, right?
Yeah,
You
because
have one
there's going to be a
image.
disconnect otherwise, you know?
Exactly. Have one image and have it on every single place, and then website and in person. So same thing, we have this conversation. You saw like the LinkedIn with the baseball bat, etc. It is going to be the exact same vibe, and that's like what I try to make sure. Like my brand, like how you see it, is the intention. Like this is how it can be as well. And to ideate, stepping backwards, look to other industries.
Hmm.
Don't just look in your own industry. Look to other industries, how they're approaching things. Because if you're just looking at your peers, or if you're looking at your competitors, or if you're just looking at your customers, they're only going to have a very narrow pathway of like these are the things that we expect.
Yeah. This is something that served me very well in my agency as well. We've never niched down to a single industry, and it helped us a lot. To help our clients innovate, because we could get content strategy from SaaS, and we could pair it with someone who was in B2C, and someone who was in tech, and all of these things helps us help our clients create better content strategies, because otherwise, if you I know there are a lot of content agencies dedicated to a single industry, but your clients will end up all looking the same. And yeah, Peter, you asked about B2B versus B2C. I think this stands for both, but at the same time, I think that you're right. B2B is slightly different from B2C, even though everyone's human. But in B2B, you see fewer impulse purchases. In B2C, if you cater to a direct customer audience, you can count on impulse purchases, and you can optimize your marketing to favor those purchases. In B2B, especially if you're talking to bigger companies, there are going to be longer sales cycles, and when there are more people that need to approve a certain purchase, that's not going to be an impulse purchase anymore. That's going to be a well researched purchase, which brings us back to what Beatrice was saying. You need a ton of continuity in your brand, and you also need to make sure that your branding, from colors to what you stand for, is rooted in something deeper than your need to make money. Like, we all understand that we're here to make money, and there's nothing shameful about it. But you need to have a deeper motivation, because otherwise you're going to um, break that continuity, that consistency, without even realizing. If you have your own values, your own 2 feet to stand on, a bloody spine, um, things are going to happen seamlessly. I know a lot of people mentioned that they see the color coordination in what I wear on my website Look, my pendant is red, my blouse is black. Those are the same colors on my website. I bought these glasses without realizing that they are in red and black. I didn't realize it. It's just the frame that I like best because these are my colors. This is why I built my website this way. And maybe not a lot of people see this. Hey, she's dressed in the exact same color she has on her website. Maybe she needs a new blouse because it's always a black blouse. Uh, but somewhere behind their brains, they realize it. They see the continuity. Sorry, they see the continuity.
And the thing is, it's usually not even conscious. It is always on a subconscious level that these things hit. And that's why you shouldn't be out there looking like for, okay, like, oh, comments about like, hey, these colors, or like this font is all like consistent, etc. It'll be showing in the way that how people remember you. It's like, we were talking about like the word badass before, right? Like,
Mhm.
if you own something, if you say it enough, you do it enough, you integrate whatever that thing be it like a mascot, be it a name, be it a color, like, the Cadbury purple color, right? It will start getting stuck in people's mind. And as soon as they think about it, they will associate to your brand.
Yeah. And I want to piggyback on this and urge people to repeat their message ad nauseum if possible, because I know a lot of people struggle with coming up with new content ideas, and I have to constantly innovate and tell people something they've never heard before. And I don't know, I want to look like a futurist on LinkedIn, and that's all fine and dandy, but um, people don't read these things in depth, and most of the time they just gloss over them. So if you feel like you're getting bored with your own content, congratulations, you're starting to make some real noise. You're starting to drill your ideas into people's minds, because ideas, they're not like viruses. They need more than one contact to stick. This is one of my favorite analogies, although it might be a bit bleak, but uh, anyway, you need to repeat your core ideas, your content pillars, your values. You need to talk about them way more than once. In B2B, people need 5 to 7 touch points to make a purchase decision, and that purchase decision isn't always yes. They need to read 7 pieces of your content to feel, hey, this is not for me, or yes, this is for me. So your job is to figure out what your content pillars are, what you stand for, what you sell, and how you present that, your branding, and then repeat those as often as you can. Not in the same way, maybe not with those exact same words every time, but your ideas need more than one touch to stick.
Exactly. And I'm going to double dab on what you just said there. The values, and that why, you know, for clients that I've worked with, it's always been like that has been the point where they're like, oh my God, we can like use this in when you recognize how strong they can be and how deep they are in everything that you do, and B, how much you can really use it in whatever your touch points are, and what are the different ways that you can talk about it. I think a lot of people talk about running out of content ideas. What are the
Mhm.
different ways that you can like approach your values, for example?
Yeah, different formats.
Exactly. And we have another question here from Rachel. What's your view on having a website when you're a fairly new business, etc.? Someone fairly prominent basically said that they don't trust businesses without one. Yet I know people who can get a flashy website, then it's out of date when they figure out who they want to work with. Facts. Facts. Adriana?
Hmm. My view will always be to not build your home on rented land. So, yes, get a website, get an email list to match that website, get a space of your own where people can find you outside of social media. This is something that I teach a lot in my Audience Accelerator course. The importance of having a website that people can link to when you start earning media. You may think that that is too soon to have a website. It's never too soon. Even if you haven't had a single client yet, you can put something out there because your website isn't like a statue that's going to freeze in time. It's super easy to update your content now, even your colors and your branding. But Beatrice knows more about that. I'm all about the written content. So as your business grows, changes, evolves, you can always make changes to that website. And I promise you, it's very, very easy. I'm someone who can barely take a screenshot and make it look symmetrical, and still I can update my website. I have a web designer for the big things, for the development, for building pages from scratch. But if I only have to change a couple of words here and there, I can do it on my own. So yes, get a website.
And look, I would add on to that. It doesn't need to be a complicated website with multiple pages. You can
Yes.
like go onto card.com, and you can get a free one. Like it's a landing page. That is all that you need, right? Even beyond card, you can get like a link tree. The point is to have somewhere where people can go to those different areas that you want them to go. I have like a beacons for my Instagram where people can just go like, hey, this is my podcast, this is the YouTube, this is except don't over like there's no reason to overcomplicate it. I think I saw this great video this morning, and then they were talking about like the businesses that take like the longest are the ones that spend a long time like overthinking things, like
Yes.
planning things out. And it's slightly going to be controversial about this, but it's like the stupid founders are the ones that have made the most because they just keep on trying different things, right? Like they're less worried about like having it like perfect or like overthinking things. Just try it. If it's going to fail, it's going to fail. Like at
Yep.
least you're not too connected to those results. Like if you're spending a long time, thinking about something, planning it out, you're gonna want to like keep on going past it actually like it being feasible.
Yep. I'm a big fan of planning and planning for 10 years if possible. But I also know that what you say is very true. You can spend way too much time overthinking. There are, I think, dozens of services where you can build a landing page for free. If you're on ConvertKit, you can have a profile for free and it looks just like a landing page. And it has an email list attached, which is a huge bonus. Um, as for planning, I think you should always be prepared to kill your darlings. Rachel, what you said about your website being obsolete by the time you realize the direction you're going to, my website has been obsolete 3 or 4 times since I started at the end of December, but I updated it section by section as my scope changed. So did my website. You don't need a 20K website to begin with. Again, you can do it for free, but be prepared to kill that version of your website, of your business, when you're ready to change. Kill your darlings is one of the very, very few blanket advices that pieces of advice that apply to almost every business.
Exactly. And before we get too deep in here, I just want to let everyone know that Adriana will be also featured on the podcasts dropping this Thursday, where we're going to be talking about future proofing and so many different golden nuggets, and maybe it's just a little bit more like table flipping, shaking things up.
Oh,
So
when did we record that, Beatrice? It was a couple of months ago, right?
think so. Maybe like speaking of forward planning.
Exactly. I
Like
remember how much fun I had recording that with you. I
and
need
then
to revisit it.
we spoke about this live before that you hadn't been doing many video events, etc. And I was like, so how about a live? do this.
Yeah. I'm not a
That-
big fan
that's
of video, but Beatrice is very, very determined to change that.
once you get me onto something, like it's hard to kind of let go. And okay, so going back to content, what are your thoughts on video and that format moving forward? Video, podcasting, like the visual elements of things.
I think there is a very bright future for video, and this has always been the case. It's not a new trend. I think it's getting more and more prevalent on every social media platform, including LinkedIn. I also think that YouTube is one of the very few social networks, although it's not fully a social network, it's also a search engine, where you can increase an audience fairly easy and only based on merit. You don't have to massage the algorithm every day. If you have good videos and they're relevant to your audience, your audience is going to grow. So yes, I'm always pro video, but as always, I don't recommend going all in. So if you can do different formats, there are people who will always prefer the written word. I'm one of those people. If there's a podcast, I don't have time to I don't have 60 minutes to listen to a podcast, but if you could have a transcript, for instance, I could just scan that for what I'm interested in. And it's also a good point of start to repurpose content. You know, you have a video, you can break it into more videos, you can use the transcript as a blog, you can attach it to your newsletter, you can add snippets of it on YouTube Shorts, on Instagram Reels, on TikTok. So it's a very flexible format, although it requires a much bigger time and money investment than written content.
Repurposing. Oh, my
Yes.
like favorite way. This morning I saw this study done by LinkedIn on the kinds of content that uh, people in B2B were looking out for and have stood out. And they found that they haven't found much humor, like humor in content. And that's also probably affected the way that they're voting. But the biggest one of the biggest factors for them was clarity in messaging. So that's interesting to see, actually, that you know it's always a question of how clear are we being in our message, how much to the point are we getting, right?
Yeah, it's a big one, and I think it all starts with what we've been discussing, your values and your content pillars. If you know these things, you're going to know how to be clear, unless you like to ramble. I'm not giving names, but I'm one of those people who likes to ramble, but I try not to.
I mean, same.
Oh, hi, Shelley. Nice to see you.
Hey, great. It's
Ah,
good to see everyone on board. And no, I feel the same. Sometimes it's easier to get in the lost in giving value where, I've gotten feedback before where, you're great at giving feedback, but it's almost too much, right? Like there's too many
mhm.
points. And I'm like, yeah, that's a really good point. Like one post could be like 10 posts. And I've had this like conversation with the clients as well that I'm working with. It's like, um, you have 10 posts in this one post. Well, you just need to pull out that one point and like, here's a
Mhm.
post. Pull out that one point.
Yep. This is one of the only uses of AI that I can get behind, because other than that, I do believe it's high tech plagiarism. So I wouldn't recommend using it too much. But if you struggle with being too verbose, you can simply put your content in an AI solution, whatever it may be, and ask it to extract the main points. I've also used it to, copy paste a newsletter of mine and tell it, hey, can you pull out like 5 tweets out of this, and yeah, it's my own work, so I don't feel bad for ripping someone else off their work.
Exactly. And so like those tweets you convert into like LinkedIn posts or those like just for tweets?
Oh, for tweets, I already do 3 LinkedIn posts off the back of a single newsletter. I think that's enough because I do an issue to tease the newsletter. That one goes out on Wednesdays because my newsletter drops on Thursdays. I do um, I put the newsletter out there, the full version, a couple of days after it goes out to my subscribers, and then after a couple of months, I'm going to repost it again, maybe with a new caption or the same caption, and for people who missed it initially. And so it's 3 posts out of a single issue. I'm good with that. And again, it's repurposing at its finest. I have a spreadsheet where I keep tabs of all the newsletters, the last time I talked about them on social media. And when the time comes after 3 or 6 months have passed, I can simply copy paste the caption that I used 6 months ago and plaster it on LinkedIn again.
Yeah. So it's repurposing from other sources. So say for example, we do like a the podcast, or we do like a live session, or we do like a newsletter, etc., and repurposing that, but also repurposing what works later, right? Like 3 months down the line, 6 months down the line. If it works the first time, or hell, then like there might be a different angle to take it. You're like, okay, maybe why did this not work? Was there like did we not were we not clear enough, perhaps, right? And that post can be reused, right? There's always a way to uh, continue forward. It's just understanding from the the brand strategy, like, okay, what is it that we want to achieve? Like, what do we want to sound like? What is that tone of voice? What is like that? How do we want to be positioned? What are our values? And having that coming up in the content.
Yeah. One thing I'd add here, I know that the first thing that springs to mind is to reuse your best performing posts, but we've all been complaining about low reach on LinkedIn. So maybe it's a good idea to give another chance to the posts that didn't do so well, but you really trusted them. You thought you were spot on with your messaging and your wording and everything. Maybe it was just a bad reach day, just like I'm having a bad hair day now and I keep flipping it to make it to tame it a little bit. Maybe
Let's say.
for a change, it wasn't you, it was the platform. So give it another shot a couple of months later. Worst thing that happens is it will tank again, but you live and learn. This is social media.
People are not going to remember. It's
Mhm.
like 3 posts ago, 5 posts ago, it's like we've already forgotten compared to things that have been like in our mind all the time.
This is one of my favorite things to say. No one cares about your content as much as you do. And this can either be sad or it can be liberating because this means that you can mess up as many times as you want. People aren't going to remember, especially if you're not, I don't know, J.K. Rowling. Looks like people do remember her very strong stances on certain thorny issues. But if you're not at that level of popularity, people will not remember what you said 3 months ago. They won't. And even if some of them do, I've had people tell me that, hey, I remember this newsletter when I first read it, but I would love a refresher, so thanks for posting. They don't remember it as well as you do. So, yeah, they need a refresher. Speaking of making your ideas stick.
I'm going to say, even then, even if you're, J.K. Rowling, etc., this too shall pass. So, like, if we take, for example, wars that are going on, or COVID, or whatever, right? Uh, in Myanmar, there was like the military coup. That was in the news for maybe a week, 2 weeks, and then like it's out of the news. Even though like right now, it's even worse than what it was then. And then we take a look, like there's a lot of things. Say, for example, Russia-Ukraine war. That was in
Yep.
the newspapers for a long time, in the news for a long time. And now what's in the news? It's it's
Oh,
not
it's the same war. Yeah, that one's holding on there. But it's also the war in the Middle East. So there's always
exactly.
a war to choose.
There's
And
always something.
I think the same can go for your content. It has the shelf life of a fruit fly. It probably leaves, especially social media content, it probably lives short. It probably leaves less than a news cycle. So yeah, go on and make your mistakes, especially if you have a fairly small audience right now.
Exactly. And well, even if you have a big one like that, still they're not going to remember. And so, okay, another thing is we were talking about this a bit was maintaining the tone of voice, right? Like I know from the brand strategy side, it's like, hey, let's make sure that we define something, keep it like clear. How about from the content side? What are your thoughts from there and the tone of
So
voice?
yeah, I'm with you. You need a certain level of consistency when it comes to your tone of voice. However, I would switch between formats and occasionally lighten up the atmosphere. I'm an educator at heart and I like to talk about these complex, thorny topics. But I know that even for my audience who likes long form reading, it can get a bit exhausting to be teaching all the time. So I try to break things down with a joke, mid newsletter, for instance. Um, because I remember when I was in school, I really liked the teachers who could crack a joke. It would help you rewire your brain because you were at some point you're too tired of amassing and of trying to understand vast amounts of information. So a joke here and there. I post a meme every Saturday because hey, we need to laugh as well. It's not all about I need to get to those 10K a week as fast as possible. you know, you need a break sometimes. So, yes, a consistent tone of voice, but if you can align your humor with your brand values, and you should do that, go for it. A consistent tone of voice doesn't necessarily mean you're always all business or stern and constipated. And, a consistent tone of voice means that you're standing by your goddamn values.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Couldn't have said it better myself. Like the thing is, okay, imagine a character, whoever that character might be like Richard Gere or like hell, like a Disney character, Jack Sparrow, the pirate, right? Like he doesn't have like there isn't one exact tone like the entire time, but you still get the perception that it's this one overall vibe. And that's why I talk about that more. Like, hey, go like work on a specific, nail down a specific vibe and see what that looks like. How does that sound like? What are the different limitations of that vibe?
Yes. And because you brought up characters, in a movie, a character goes through a ton of phases, and sometimes they grow, sometimes their progress is halted, sometimes they're sad, sometimes they're happy. So they obviously have a different tone of voice, but you can tell it's the same character. There is a continuity. There is a continuity to their story. So this is a very, very good analogy. I love it. Yeah.
Exactly. And we are getting in the closing few minutes. So, guys, if you have any questions, pop them in for Adriana and I to tackle, from future proofing to content to brand strategy,
I
all of
think
the above.
I think we have a question from Rachel who's asking about people who use their content in their newsletters. I guess you're referring to their social media content. I've seen that too. I've seen it from some rather big influencers. To me, it's a wasted opportunity because if you're on if you're on social media, you kind of want to scroll past everything and scan and skim what you see. On the other hand, when you open your email and you open uh, a newsletter, you expect to be reading for a couple of minutes at the very least. You will allocate more time to opening an email, maybe responding to it, maybe taking notes if it's that kind of newsletter. You allocate more time to it than to a social media post. So if all you do is copy paste your best performing LinkedIn posts in your newsletter tool, I think you're missing out on a lot of things, because even the format, even the tone of voice, and not the format, the formatting, they have to be slightly different on email than they are on social media. Sure, you can do that, especially when you're pressed for time, but I wouldn't recommend it as a long-term strategy, because you're missing out on this incredible opportunity that's email.
What about the other way around, though? Like bits of your newsletter into your content.
Yes, yes, because they
Yeah,
can act as teasers for,
exactly.
yep.
Or even you've gone into like a certain topic and you're like you haven't approached it from that angle, say for example, yet in your content, taking
Mhm.
that in there, right? Like I've definitely from my side made videos from things that I've covered in the newsletter. But it is a great tool. Like having those newsletters there is it's less scrollable past, like scroll pastable. You know what I mean.
Yeah, I
Like
do.
so it's more inclined to be stuck in the same in people's mind. The same thing as say for example a podcast, right?
Mhm.
Or long form like YouTube video. These kinds of content are more inclined to be like people will actively hunt that out, like okay, I wanted to go and have a look at Adriana's newsletter, so I'm going to look at that today. Like you're actually making time for that, rather than when you're scrolling you're just scrolling, right?
Yeah,
Like
maybe
there's
you're bored.
nothing particular.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's not really going in.
And there's one thing to add here. Social media is a great resource for getting attention. Long form content, email newsletters, blog posts, podcasts, long form YouTube videos, they're great for retaining attention. People will remember you. Well, they're more likely to remember you if they consumed a long form piece of content from you. If all they see is your social media post, you're just another tiny, tiny picture on their feed. Maybe they won't remember you. It's very, very hard to get them to remember you in the long run, I mean, and especially to buy from you if all they consume from you are short form pieces of content. Yeah.
Exactly. And speaking of like long form content, I know we should have had one there for you, Adriana, on your newsletter, but if you want to, no, where's it? Okay, here we go. You can sign up to the Badass Mob, which is actually it's a newsletter. It's not a mob. Like you will not get a hit on you. There is a hit out on being boring, which we tackle every newsletter. So if you want to sign up for that, hand-eye coordination, pop in that like QR code, and we got you.
Yes,
And
and do scan that QR code, because Beatrice's newsletter is one of the very few I read every week. See, because it's long form and it retains my attention, and you're memorable.
you mean it wasn't the baseball bat? It wasn't the scary baseball bat that did it.
It was. That was the thing that grabbed my attention, and you retained it with long form content. See, it all fits.
Balance. It's balance, and also yes, to sign up to Adriana as well. What's the website address for people?
adrianatica.com/newsletter. Oh, or you can find it on my LinkedIn profile. It's easier to click. Hang on, I think we have a couple more questions. Someone says
Mhm.
that you can turn interviews into mini episodes, newsletter into posts. It's a great strategy if you have the time to do it. I know it is time intensive, but I'm going to argue that it is far, far less time consuming than creating something from scratch every time. So, especially, and I say this as someone who's been doing content for more than 15 years, it's very, very hard to have great ideas every day. Ideation becomes a problem after a certain time. So it's better to keep playing your greatest hits than to put mediocre content out there just because you have to feed the insatiable algorithm machine and you have to post something today. So it's a much better idea to repurpose older pieces of content that you know are spot on than to create something that's mediocre. I don't know about
Exactly.
you,
I
Beatrice.
mean,
Are you always in your zone of genius? Can you always create stunning content every day? Because I know I can't. So that's a big no from me.
oh, definitely not. And another thing I would add on to that is you don't need to be posting every day. You don't need, like, you don't have to do. And I know like a lot of people like post 5 times a week, comment on like 400 posts. Like
No.
you really don't need to, right? Like the quality, and I know people are talking about this as well. Quality content is so much better, right? Repurpose when you can't think of things. It's what I do. Like I'm just at this point, I have enough, thankfully. um, but like at the beginning, you're just putting out content, keep things to like quality, and then repurpose and look to other industries for content, for ideas, for when you want to look at your strategy, to look at your differentiation. How are people doing things? Like we take Halo Top, the ice cream, right? There's a fantastic breakdown on them where they, instead of going in the oversaturated ice cream industry, they were like, okay, let's instead focus on this as like a gym supplement or a workout supplement kind of thing. So that's a completely different reframe where others hadn't yet hit on, right?
Yes.
So, are there any last questions before this we roll this up? Yes.
So
Thank
the
you,
tip would
Rachel.
be, thank you, Rachel. So the tip would be to create a newsletter first so that your audience can see the full content and then you can do, yes. Ideally, it doesn't have to be a newsletter. It can be a YouTube video, it can be a podcast, but your long form piece of content is what's going to generate the most opportunities for repurposing.
Exactly. Uh, this is very true. It takes far too long to create the amount of content. Yeah, no, I think there's a very big myth out there that like everybody's just constantly trying, like thinking of new things. Like I burn out, like no lie, I burn out, or like I burn out of ideas. And you just need to take a step back, look at other things, other perspectives, um, get back that creativity, right? Like to me, a lot of what that creativity is like me bringing back my childhood version. How would I look at this perspective as a kid? Because I still remember as a kid looking at the TV, like yelling, like, "Hey, these ads. This is what I want to do. This is exactly what I want to do. This will be so fun." Like linking two completely different things. Maybe that's a great way to ideate. Look at two different things on your desk, like have a pen and earphones. Okay, how can we connect those? Just don't
Yep.
even have it related to what you're doing as a business. But then your brain is already starting to ideate outside of the box. Then you can go back to your original problem of like, okay, and suddenly you're having ideas which are out of the box and they're standing out. And the more you do that, because the first time people are not necessarily going to come, but the more you do that, people are going to notice and then they're going to come.
Yep. Very true. One last thing, there's someone who says if you have been on a journey, the old content is not material that you want to reuse again, really. I can't see your name. I'm sorry for not calling out your name. The platform's just showing LinkedIn user. And yes, that's very, very true. You need at least 3 to 6 months on the same in the same industry and the same journey so that you have enough material to repurpose. That's true. For the first 3 to 6 months, you're going to be producing content like mad, new content. Good luck.
What I would say there though is like I think another thing perspective of like reading that is that how we write and the problems that we tackle, say for example, a year or two from like ago, maybe not may not be good enough. Okay, like I'm not sure what the better wording is there.
Yeah.
It may not be good enough to post now, and that's like
Yeah.
another problem.
It is. Not all of your content is going to be reusable. For instance, I have a lot of newsletter issues that are trend analysis, and those are a bit time sensitive. If I wrote something about content economy, creator economy trends for 2024, I did this in the beginning of the year or the end of 2023. It's no longer relevant now. But with time, you gather a lot of evergreen stuff that's still good, you know? As soon as you
Exactly.
found your voice and your content pillars, you will have plenty to repurpose when your muse is elusive, as they always are.
Just need to like lock that muse in. Anyway, we're just over an hour. I think we're gonna call it here.
Wow.
Thank you so much to everyone who's actually joined in and had a listen, and those who have said they're gonna come in and listen to this afterwards. Hit us up with your thoughts. Any questions? I mean, this is another form of research, right? Like, what are the questions that have been asked?
Yep.
There you go. Like, have a live, have it about a topic, and see what people ask. Thank you again, Adriana.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Tris.
you coming on, making this happen.
Thank you. See
You're
you.
badass.